I didn't really think I needed to do this, but there is a huge debate going on right now as to who really won in Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington 2. Now, firstly, it was an excellent fight by both fighters, the two best welterweights today, and Kamaru Usman definitely putting up an argument to be the greatest welterweight of all time. He's a special fighter that we're witnessing live, and most likely going to go down as one of the biggest legends of the sport. Colby Covington showed his grit, showed his toughness, showed his ability to adapt in the fight and do better in the later rounds, where in the first fight it was Kamaru Usman who was doing better in the later rounds. But a lot of the contribution to Usman's victory was the perfection on his jab. I mean, I've been saying it for years. Kamaru Usman probably has the best jab in MMA, and his boxing has gotten tremendously better even after his last fight against Jorge Masvidal. Colby Covington fought with a lot more strategy and definitely showed his improvements in the striking as well, with the body kicks, the jabs, the combinations, staying composed. It was the best version of each fighter that we have ever seen, and according to the judges, Kamaru Usman won the fight. Now, fans, other analysts, and even fighters are saying that the fight could have been a draw or even could have went to Colby Covington. And that's a bit different from what I saw when I watched it live. Now I am curious and I want to see what some of these analysts, fighters, and fans are saying in terms of the fight was even closer than we originally thought. When I originally watched the fight live, I thought that Usman did enough to win the fight. I gave him 48-46, giving the second round a 10-8, and then also giving him the first and the third, Colby for sure winning the fourth and fifth. But after rewatching the fight multiple times, I have to say that the fight is a lot closer than I thought, and now I could definitely see the argument for a draw and possibly even Colby Covington winning the fight, but that is why we're going to be looking at the fight again to end this debate and to see if the judges got the decision right. Now, firstly, what I did find was Colby Covington definitely did get fouled more than I thought he did. He got hit to the back of the head multiple times throughout the fight. There was the important cage grab from Kamaru Usman in that third round, and of course the eye poke as well. The multiple offenses against Colby Covington didn't warrant any kind of point deduction. I can understand why, but at the same time, I believe if there's an eye poke, cage grab, or any of this stuff, there should be a lot less leniency. Now, there is that argument that the referee possibly could have taken more action in at least giving more warnings or taking a point in the fight. But how did the judges look at the fight? We had Sal D'Amato, Dave Torelli, and Derek Cleary scoring the fight. D'Amato and Cleary both judged the first fight between Usman and Covington, and they both had a drastically different scorecard for their first fight. Derek Cleary gave 3 rounds to Usman and only 1 round to Covington, whereas D'Amato gave 3 rounds to Covington and 1 round to Usman. And now when we look at the second fight, their scorecards are a lot more similar. So every single judge gave the first and second round to Usman, and they all scored the 4th round for Covington, and here's when the disagreements come in. Torelli and Cleary gave the 3rd round to Usman, which a lot of people believe is the most controversial round, it's the closest round to score. And Sal D'Amato and Derek Cleary both gave the 5th round to Kamaru Usman. So the rounds we're going to be looking at for this fight are the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th rounds to determine who really won this fight and even if a draw would be acceptable. Now, as we know, generally damage and effective grappling trump all, so we're going to be categorizing every single strike in accordance to damage to get the most accurate way of judging the round. And let's start with that second round to see if it actually was a 10-8. So they both get in a wild exchange here. Covington is throwing a right overhand after throwing a high kick. He misses as his eyes are not on Usman, and Usman's able to hit him with a check left hook behind the ear, almost to the back of the head, that stumbles Colby Covington. Usman moves forward, and they both land on each other. Covington eyes to the ground, but throws out a winging right overhand that connects on Usman with his forearm, and Usman is able to land a right uppercut to the body. Jab is able to sneak in there for Usman. Covington able to land a body kick right under the arm. And now as Colby is being super aggressive, but not having his eyes on Usman again, this is the thing that's hurting him. Usman watches Colby come in and shoots down a straight right, straight punch beat looping punch, but only nicks Colby Covington, doesn't have much impact. And then Usman slightly checks a low kick where the impact actually happens on Covington's foot. This may be a reason why Covington left the arena on crutches. And if this is actually the impact that causes that damage to him, it's actually very impressive that Covington fought the rest of the fight, almost 4 rounds with a hurt foot. They both engage each other in the clinch, and Usman is able to land 2 uppercuts to the body as Covington lands 2 body knees of his own. Usman lands at the end of 2 of his jabs. Covington extends with a long left straight, lands at the end of it, and then Usman slips the left straight and goes under and connects on Colby with a right body uppercut. Usman grazes Colby with a jab. Colby lands a right low kick, switching up the stances because last time he seemed to have hurt his foot potentially by staying in southpaw throwing the low kick. Now he went to orthodox and threw it, which is a much better angle when you're fighting an orthodox fighter because when you're in southpaw, it's much easier for the opposite stance fighter to check your power kick. And then Colby throws out a winging right slap that connects on Usman. And then Usman lands a big jab on Colby Covington as Covington misses his. And then later, Colby is able to land his own jab. Not much impact at all. And then Usman wings a long left hook that catches Colby on the chin and seemed to have wobbled him a bit. Colby did not think this punch would land because he was trying to pull away from it, so he got surprised by the reach of the punch. And then Usman is able to follow this up with a jab. Usman engages heavily and lands a left hook right over the guard that gets a good reaction out of Colby. Usman's able to land with a left body uppercut, and as he rises up after the aggression to pull away, lands a right hook, misses his left overhand, and shifts with a right overhand that lands on Usman. Usman lands 4 light strikes against the cage, and then lands 3 shoulder strikes. Colby with a knee to the hip, and then Usman disengages the clinch with a very light right hook. Now this one is hard to see because of the camera angle. Usman throws a right front kick to the body, but Covington definitely blocks it. It's hard to see from the angle if the toes actually connect and dig in there a bit. We'll revisit this if it actually makes any difference. But then later Usman lands a calf kick that gets a big reaction out of Colby. Colby grazes with a body kick, and as Colby's trying to fade away from Usman, he gets tagged slightly by a right hook. Usman paws out with a right straight, and then Colby finally gets aggressive again. He throws out a right straight that glances off Usman but does get a good reaction out of him, and then Colby chains up the combination with a left hook on the ear. A jab from Usman, and then they both land on each other. Usman cocks back his right hand and throws out a long right uppercut as Colby intercepts Usman with a jab. Not much of a reaction out of Colby, but it looks like Usman got stunned by that jab. There is a possibility that the floor was slippery and it made it look like Usman lost balance because of it, but it does look like Usman got stunned by the punch. And Colby seeing Usman's reaction made him get a lot more aggressive to capitalize on this opportunity. Colby throws out a winging left overhand as Usman intercepts him with a left hook and drops Colby. As Colby's rising up after hitting the ground, Usman's able to land a right hook, and then as Colby reaches forward to keep Usman away, his reach is too short, Usman is able to land another left hook that drops Colby again. And this is when it looked like it was going to be the end of the fight. And it's also where Usman lands a blatant shot to the back of the head. It wasn't Colby moving his head and that's why he got hit. No, Usman just hammers him in the back of the head as he's trying to chase the finish. That somehow it was missed by Dan Miragliotta, who has a clear view of what's happening. And then as Colby is chasing the takedown to survive, he does take 2 big punches, but he does take another shot to the back of the head. And then after being warned, Usman starts going to the body, lands 7 body blows to end the second round. Tallying up all the strikes, Kamaru Usman landed a total of 41 strikes, where Colby Covington landed 15, almost a third of what Usman landed. So definitely the cumulative impact 100% goes to Kamaru Usman. Usman also almost landed 3 times the light strikes. He landed 3 times the medium strikes, 1 more heavy strike, and he had 2 knockdowns. This seems like a 10-8 round to me. But what does the scoring criteria say? A 10-8 round in MMA is when one fighter wins a round by a large margin. A 10-8 round in MMA is not the most common score a judge will render, but it absolutely is essential to the evolution of the sport and the fairness to the fighters that judges understand and effectively utilize a score of 10-8. A score of 10-8 does not require a fighter to dominate their opponent for 5 minutes of a round. The score of 10-8 is utilized by the judge when the judge sees verifiable actions on the part of either fighter. Judges shall always give a score of 10-8 when the judge has established that one fighter has dominated the action of the round, had duration of the domination, and also impacted their opponent with effective strikes or grappling maneuvers that have diminished the abilities of their opponent. Judges must consider giving a 10-8 round when a fighter shows dominance on a round even though no impactful scoring against the opponent was achieved. MMA is an offensive-based sport. No scoring is given for defensive maneuvers. Dominance of a round can be seen in strike when the losing fighter continually attempts to defend with no counters or reaction taken when openings present themselves. If a fighter has little to no offensive output during a 5-minute round, it should be normal for a judge to consider awarding the losing fighter 8 points instead of 9. Judges must consider giving a score of 10-8 when a fighter impacts their opponent significantly in a round, even though they do not dominate the action. This is where it pretty much falls into. Effectiveness in striking or grappling, which leads to a diminishing of a fighter's energy, confidence, abilities, and spirit. All of these come as a direct result of a negative impact. When a fighter is hurt with strikes, showing a lack of control or ability, these can be defining moments in the fight. If a judge sees that the fighter has been significantly damaged in the round, the judges should consider a score of 10-8. So according to the judging criteria, 100%, the judges absolutely should consider scoring the 10-8 to Kamaru Usman. He dominated the majority of the action of the round. Number 1, even though Usman didn't have complete domination, he did dominate the majority of the round. He significantly hurt Colby Covington multiple times in that round, and also Usman impacted his opponent significantly, and he doesn't even need domination in order for the round to be considered a 10-8 for him. But the fact that he had somewhat domination of the round means that more likely this round should have been scored a 10-8 for him. He damaged his opponent, he impacted him with significant strikes, and he was semi-dominant. So according to the judging criteria, it's not a guaranteed 10-8 for Kamaru Usman because it looks like it's judging by a probability or how likely should the round be given a 10-8 for a certain fighter, because it does say what should always be scored a 10-8 if the fighter dominated the action of the round, had a duration of domination, and impacted their opponent. But then it also talks about consideration. In the consideration requirements for Kamaru Usman, he definitely has those, and even more so, because to be considered for a 10-8, you don't need to be dominant while you're hurting your opponent. He had more dominance than to be required for consideration. So, according to the judging criteria, there is a chance that the judges don't have to give it a 10-8 to Kamaru Usman because he didn't meet the always score 10-8 requirements, but he definitely meets all the requirements for a consideration of a 10-8 score, and even more so, which means more likely than average, this round should have been scored a 10-8 for Kamaru Usman. I don't like how the judging criteria is so up in the air like this. So if you believe that this round is a 10-8, then the fight is going to go to Kamaru Usman or it's going to be a draw. That's what we're going to be looking at the third round and the fifth. And let's get right into that third round. So Colby Covington opens it up by missing a high kick, but he brings it downward and accidentally grazes Kamaru Usman. It's one of the only axe kicks I've ever seen land in the UFC. Then later, Colby lands a left hook that does get a good reaction out of Usman. Usman then lands 3 jabs. 2 of them are light as Colby is moving away from it, decreasing the impact of the blow, but the second one digs in there more, causing more impact. Colby then later lands a jab as Usman retaliates with a left hook that only grazes Colby. Usman then later lands 2 jabs in different intervals, both times not having much impact as Colby is again moving away from the punch, decreasing the impact. Colby then later retaliates, gets aggressive, throws a jab of his own which Usman is able to slide away from, but he slides away into Colby's left side and eats a big left straight that causes immense impact. Usman grazes with the right straight, and Colby Covington later tries to get a takedown on Usman. Usman lands on the back of the head at one point again, and then later lands 5 body hooks. As Colby tries to stand up for the field takedown attempt, Usman lands a big left hook on him that gets a good reaction out of Colby. Usman lands with a grazing body hook in the clinch, lands at the end of 2 jabs again as Colby's moving away from them, and then they both land strikes on each other. Colby's able to land a darting right jab as Usman intercepts that motion with a body kick. Had a lot of an effect on Colby, stopped him in his tracks, and got a good reaction out of him. Then later, Usman is able to land a right hand of his own, just pawing it out there, but then they both land on each other again. Colby's able to land a jab, and Usman returns with the right straight. Colby was trying to pull away from the punch, but does get connected by it. Another intercepting jab from Colby Covington. Colby lands a jab as he's moving away from Usman's right straight. But now Colby lands a jab as Usman's looking to pull away from it in order to land his right cross. But Colby was able to catch the right hand while it was coming at him, something you don't normally see from fighters. Usman engages forward as Colby slips on the outside of his right straight, and Usman gets intercepted by a combination. Jab, left overhand, and right uppercut both graze Usman. Colby then follows this up with a left hook that lands clean, as Usman is winging in an overhand right that lands with the side of his hand and his wrist that also lands pretty good on Colby Covington. And then Usman is able to land a combination of his own, lands a big jab on Colby that gets a good reaction out of him, and the impact of the blow allowed Usman to go forward again and land a right straight at the very end of it. Grazing body jab from Usman, and then he lands later a pawing right straight as Colby moves away, and then later adds up a winging left body hook. And this one, Colby gets his own offense off on Usman. He throws out a fake jab in order to land a left straight that grazes. Usman was trying to slip to his left, and while his eyes are off of Colby, he throws out a winging right overhand that lands to the chest as Colby lands a right hook to the top of Usman's head. Colby gets super aggressive, throws out another fake right jab in order to land a big left straight that stuns Usman and gets him off balance. Definitely one of the biggest punches of the round. Seeing that he hurt Usman and now Usman is on the back foot trying to get away from Colby, Colby wings out a huge left overhand that misses into a shifting right overhand that grazes Usman as Usman is moving away from the punch, decreasing the impact of the blow. This is what Colby has been doing for the majority of Usman's punches, and after is when the whole debacle with the takedown happens. Now about the takedown, I went over it in my previous video. Through consistency, it should have been scored given that there are other examples of takedowns that were very similar to this, but ultimately it wasn't scored. I see people saying that you need to be able to attack the opponent or advance further in order for it to be scored a takedown, but that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of takedowns that were awarded when the opponent took their opponent to the ground and landed no strikes until like 30 seconds later, or didn't even advance anywhere until like 30 seconds later. Yet those are awarded as takedowns. The rules about takedowns are not well thought out, in my opinion. They're not well written. They're left up into interpretation, and that's my biggest gripe about the whole situation. It's just the scoring and the rule set are so strange and not clear. But if we have to, we will revisit this takedown. But from there, Colby Covington is able to land 2 shots against the cage, and that's what ends the 3rd round. So tallying up all the strikes, Kamaru Usman landed the more total strikes, where Colby Covington had the heaviest shots in the round. Usman landed 6 more light strikes and 3 more medium strikes. Colby Covington had 2 heavy strikes where Usman had none. The total output isn't that vastly different, 7 total strikes, so the cumulative damage isn't that impactful, especially with the fact that Usman didn't really hurt him that badly in the round. Colby Covington had 2 big shots on Usman that definitely got a huge reaction out of him and caused him to back away from his aggression. Now, according to the judging criteria, immediate impact weighs heavier than cumulative impact. That means whoever landed the harder shots, that's who the round is going to go to if the cumulative damage doesn't trump the immediate damage, showing that Usman didn't really hurt Colby all that bad in this round, and Colby having the bigger strikes of the round. That means, according to the judging criteria, which is a criteria I do not agree with, according to the judging criteria, that means Colby Covington has to win this round. It is an extremely close round, just like we saw it live, and if we have to go to that takedown, that could be the deciding factor to Colby winning that 3rd round for sure. If they count that takedown on Usman, and Usman did not grab the cage, this round for sure would have went to Colby Covington. Even without it, according to the judging criteria on immediate impact, we should be giving the 3rd round a 10-9 to Colby Covington. And with that, we go right into the 5th round. So straight away, Usman reaches in for a long right hook to the body as Colby's moving away from it. Doesn't really cause much impact on Colby. As Colby misses an uppercut, Usman lands with the side of his hand to Colby's body. Now as Usman is ducking on Colby's straight punches, Colby intercepts him with a good uppercut on Kamaru Usman that gets a decent reaction out of him. Colby, believing that he hurt Usman, he tries to pounce forward. Usman slips on the inside of his jab and counters him with a left hook that temporarily dazes Colby and gets Colby to move away from Usman. Usman starts to reach forward for that big right hook to the body again. Colby tries to intercept him with a check right hook, but hits him with his forearm as Usman grazes the body hook. Big right straight lands for Kamaru Usman as Colby this time did not move away from the punch. He took the full impact of the blow. Now Colby on the back foot has to get out some offense to keep Usman off of him. As Usman extends with that long jab, Colby gets his head off the center line, slips on the outside of it, and lands a big left overhand into a winging right uppercut that backs up Usman. Usman gets aggressive again with the jab, and Colby intercepts him with his own, snapping Usman's head back. Usman magnified the damage of the blow by running into it, and then also gets intercepted by a straight left, straight punch beat looping punch that rattles Usman. Usman stops his offense and starts to back away just a little bit from Colby. Usman yet again throws out another jab, and Colby Covington, just like before, gets his head off the center line, slips on the outside of it, and this time throws a left hook to the body, and then another right uppercut that stuns Usman into a left hook that gets a big reaction out of Usman. Now this left hook didn't look all that powerful, but it definitely wobbled Usman. Usman lands 1 ground and pound shot as he sprawls and snaps down on Colby's takedown. Usman lands 2 light jabs and then a pawing right straight as he slips on Colby's uppercut and throws in a winging right overhand that looks like it connects to the neck, but ultimately doesn't get much of a reaction out of Colby. Another grazing jab by Usman, and then he throws up a high kick that just grazes with the toes. Then Usman pulls out with another right straight as Colby pulls on the punch. It does land at the very end of it, and Colby tries to counter him after the pull. He lands a jab to the neck, and then it looks like a left hook around the guard. Another grazing jab from Usman lands to the forehead of Colby. Colby intercepts Usman with a jab and then pulls away from the right straight. Usman then grazes the right straight to the forehead. Colby grazes Usman's body with his toes when he throws a body kick. Usman lands a jab. After Colby shoots in a takedown as Usman trips over himself, Usman is able to land 13 strikes against the cage, and Colby lands 7 of his own. After getting away from the cage, Usman rips up a body hook, and then Colby lands an even bigger knee to the body. After repositioning from the knee, Usman grazes with a body hook, and Colby ends the clinch exchange with a grazing elbow. Usman is able to land 3 light jabs from a distance, as Colby then paws out with a left hand in order to chase his combination, but that's when he gets poked in the eye. Later, Usman gets aggressive and throws in a big right straight as Colby slips on the outside of it, and lands a check right hook that gets a good reaction out of Usman. Usman's really walking into some of these punches, and that ends the 5th round. And you might be wondering why Usman's giving such big reactions after getting caught by Colby. It's because he's literally taking these shots full on. Many of these punches that you've seen, he's walked right into them head first. Whereas the majority of Usman's punches, Colby is sliding away, pulling away from them, and decreasing the impact of the blows. When Colby did get hit full on, you saw him get hurt and dropped. And that is the end of the 5th round. After tallying up all the strikes, Kamaru Usman landed 8 more total strikes than Colby Covington, landed 15 more light attacks, but Colby Covington landed 6 more medium and 1 more heavy. And you know how the judging criteria is. Whoever landed the heavier blows in the round, that is where the round is going to go to. Therefore, the 5th round is going to go to Colby Covington. Usman did land that one big left hook, but that was mainly like the only big shot he ever landed in the entire round. Colby Covington was able to dish out a lot more damage throughout that round, and you have to also note, almost half of Usman's strikes that he landed here were those light attacks in the clinch, where many of Colby Covington's were full-on power shots that Usman walked into. Therefore, this round goes 10-9 to Colby Covington. So what we know now is, Usman won the 1st and the 2nd round, by a 10-8. Colby Covington arguably edged out the 3rd, won the 4th, and won the 5th. So did the judges get the decision correct? Arguably no, this fight should have been scored a draw. 47-47. There still is an argument that the 3rd round could have went to Kamaru Usman. But if we're going to be fair and judge the takedown as it should be, then for sure Colby won the 3rd round. It just shows how great these two fighters are, that they are again able to put on another extremely competitive fight against each other. And what would have happened if the fight got scored correctly? We would have had a 3rd fight most likely, or there's a possibility Colby would be in a similar position he is today, where he would have to have another win because he didn't win against the champion. But he wouldn't be in the back of the line the way he is now. He would probably need one big win, and they would have thrown him right back in there against Usman if the fight was scored correctly. Now, Colby's going to need multiple wins to get back to that title shot, as Usman is going to continue to reign and pick off the other contenders of this division. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and if you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.